I'd like to welcome Mike Fenwick here, who has been running a campaign to sign a declaration, the Declaration of a Sovereign Scot, and he's going to tell us how that's going and what it involves, and be ready to receive a wee task once he's finished. Over to you, Mike.
Good evening, everyone. You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll swivel round as required. I found the heckler. I want to start with Burns. With some power, the gift he gave us to see ourselves as others see us. And I use a prop for this. And Julian will be glad that it's not full with what I'm going to do to it. Before I do anything to it, can I just clarify? I am not currently a member of a political party. I never have been a member of a political party, and I have no intention of ever joining a political party. I have, however, and this is not arrogant, I have, however, been asked by governments, political parties, to give them advice when they've hit a problem. That, ladies and gentlemen, is my version of Scotland as we stand just now. But that's exactly where Scotland is just now. We're trapped. We can't get the top off. We can't get independence. We're looking for ways to do it, and we're struggling. And inside there are a lot of bubbles. Political parties, think tanks, pressure groups, me doing my thing, Peter Bell doing his thing, what happened on Saturday. We've got to get the top off, folks, and we've got to do it soon. That's my prop over. What I'm going to do, and I'm glad to an extent this is the setup we're in, because I do something unusual when I'm speaking. I actually ask people to ask me questions, not at the end. You can do that, it's a Q&A on the agenda. If I say something and what I'm going to do, put your hand up, just interrupt me. Don't do it all through the night, we'll be here forever. But just ask me. If I didn't follow what you were just saying, Mike, just ask me and I'll try and respond to it. It's a jigsaw. I'm going to deal with what happened at the weekend as part of what I'm talking about, but it's the second half of what I'm going to talk about. There's a relationship, there always has been, between what I'm doing with the declaration and what Salvo are doing. I'll explain that. What I want to start with is a theme that I'll run through. What did happen? What didn't happen? And are we in danger of repeating the mistakes as I talk you through this? But I want to start off. I guaranteed gentlemen at the end, James, that I would try and cheer him up a wee bit. And I tend to worry about polls when they come out. I've never been asked a question about what I think of anything. So I wonder who's being asked. Is it all dial-up? Is it people who are desperate to give their opinions? But polls are hovering on independence. Some have been above 50%, some slightly below 50%. I'm going to use 50-50. James, I don't know how you came here today. Maybe you walked, car or bus, but when you came out of your house, did you realise, if it's 50-50, that every second house you walk past, every second house is a yes house? And as you walk past people in the street, every second person you walk past is a yes person. I drove, every second car is a yes car. That's the worst we're ever going to be, folks. That's where we build from, and that's what we've got to do. I said, what did happen? What didn't happen? I'm going to start with 1320, the Declaration of Arbroath. As long as but 100 of us remain alive, now you'll know the rest of it. But they didn't just write that. They wrote a document. It was a declaration. It wasn't a post in the National or the Herald or something on Facebook. They declared what they wanted to do. That's where I fit in when I talk about a declaration. They then sent it internationally. They didn't post it down the road or have a wee meeting somewhere in Dunfermline and Abbey View Bowling Club. They sent it to who was recognised at that time as an authority. They sent it to the Pope. Now fortunately someone kept a copy because no one quite knows what the Pope did with the original. But they did that. That's important because out of what they did, they said, yeah, we can have a king, but don't do anything wrong, Your Majesty, because we can remove you. And this is my second part of the theme. The people are sovereign. We do not work on that basis to the extent that we were left that legacy. The people are sovereign. We keep passing the power up the way. That's why I'm not in a political party. I live by the fact that every single one person in this room has the power to exercise their opinion on any subject, but particularly on independence. And that's what I did. That's the National, God bless it, stops when it actually was a newspaper, and forgive me, National, for saying that, but I don't think of you very highly. That's dated June 21. Wanted 100 Scots to sign a declaration to the United Nations. That's a year and a half, nearly, before Salvo appeared on the scene. Salvo appeared on the scene and we had discussions, and I'll come on to that in a second. But I started off with the idea of only wanting 100 people to do this, because I thought I could be effective with just 100, and I wanted to follow the Declaration of Arbroath. What then happened? Two things. Number one, the demand was greater than I thought was going to happen. So National and I had discussions and they said it's a yes hit. That was a week after that article. That's all it took. Suddenly people woke up. But the National then said to me, would you mind putting it online, Mike? I said, I'm doubtful about doing that. But they put a link online, I put a link online. Two things happened. And one is relevant to what we'll do later tonight. First thing that happened, and we don't know whether it was a 15-year-old boy or girl in their bedroom with nothing better to do, but it was hacked. And it was abused. A week later, it was totally hacked. We think by professionals. Now I'll tell you how it was abused. I met one person that did this, but there was a great deal more did it. They downloaded the form once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, some as many as 50 times. And they signed it in their own name, and Mickey Mouse, and someone of the Flintoff family, any name that they could conjure up. The quickest way of killing any benefit this can produce is if it's abused. It happened when the 2 million signatures were put on a petition back in the day and went off to the United Nations. It was knocked down on the basis you couldn't verify the signatures. The way I'm doing it is in stages, and the final stage will include verification. I'm not going to tell you what it's about yet, but it's going to happen later on. But I wrote the declaration in December 2020 and I sat on it for 6 months because I wanted to date it. That's a letter to the Secretary General of the United Nations, dated the 6th of April 2021. 6th of April, anniversary of the Declaration of Arbroath. I'm going to read you one of the paragraphs from it. And this is where, if you want to ask me any questions, interrupt me please. What I said is there is widespread evidence, both past, current and to be anticipated, that the current UK government will resist, brackets at best, and strongly oppose and reject, brackets at worst, any attempt to resolve the question of whether the sovereign people of Scotland can use normal democratic means of addressing the issue of Scotland regaining its independence, whether that's at elections or by way of referenda. It is important to note that potential denial of democratic means of resolving the issue affects both sides of the debate. Doesn't matter whether you're yes or whether you're no. UK government have just said you can't have a say in it. The future of your country is not for you to decide. This is about a year and a half later. Again, it's a letter to Secretary General, and to explain, when I collect batches of declarations, I scan them, keep a copy for future generations to witness. The originals go off to the United Nations, and every time I send a batch, whether it's 5, 50 or 500, when I send them off, I make sure there's a letter sent. This is a bit long, but it's important, and it ties in. Sorry, on you go.
Do you know what they have done with any of these missives?
They are all sent, track and sign, so every single one of them has been delivered to the UN building in New York. The only joke I'll tell you tonight is at one stage I'm going to run probably a crowdfunder, because I want to buy a filing cabinet for the UN. The truthful answer is I don't know. I spoke to Sheriff Azizov on Saturday, and he said they will have kept them, Mike, but he said I couldn't tell you where.
You don't get any acknowledgement or anything?
I'll come on to that in a second. The following are relevant extracts from General Assembly 1514. Now, if you know anything about Salvo and Liberation, you'll know that they're using that resolution 1514. I was only maybe a year ahead of them in doing it, and what that says is got 3 bits. All peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social and cultural development. Second bit, any attempt aimed at the partial or total disruption of the national unity and the territorial integrity of a country is incompatible with the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. The one thing I've asked the Secretary General to do, and the only thing I've asked him to do, is to keep the documents I'm sending to him safe. I don't expect any response in terms of, hey Mike, you're quoting something, this is important. It's never going to happen. It's not my target. Where my target comes in is when I ask them a question. Are the United Nations and its constituent nation members bound by General Assembly Resolution 1514 and bound to uphold those central provisions as they apply to Scotland and its sovereign people? Now, I didn't expect an answer to that question because it's not my target. That's my target. It's a letter dated June 2023. It's addressed to 18 UN member countries. I'm going to invite you, I'm not going to read out all the bits I've highlighted in there, but it's a discussion taking place in the United Nations. Bear with me for a second. In October 1984, and it's a UK person speaking to the General Assembly. And I'll read you one bit. We must not forget that peoples can also be deprived of their right by their own countrymen. So in 1954, you're in a situation where the UK did not feel threatened by independence in Scotland. So they sent a representative to speak at the United Nations, and everything that he said stresses the right of self-determination and the threat that it poses if it's ever ignored by members. He ends by saying, you can read this if you want after I've finished speaking, the principle of self-determination is both inalienable and indivisible. Nation states, all of us, have a vital interest in it. We cannot afford to be selective in its application because none of us, except perhaps the very strongest, can be sure when our own right of self-determination may be threatened. And that's the UK speaking freely at that time. I wasn't worried about independence in Scotland. That letter went, and the quotes I'm using, went to 18 UN member states, each of whom has a common characteristic. Each of them gained their independence from the UK. Australia, Barbados, Canada, Fiji, Ghana, India, Ireland, Jamaica, Kenya, Malawi, Mauritius, the Chagos Islands, New Zealand, the Seychelles, South Africa, the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, Uganda, and the great old USA. Think how those countries might respond. The one I would select from here, Fiji is one of the C24 committee that Liberation are going to be meeting. The one I would use is South Africa. Nelson Mandela was sent to prison for life. So were a number of his fellow South Africans. He's in prison. And Glasgow decided to do something about it. The first thing they did was they said, where's the South African consulate in Glasgow? And they found the street. They said, right, take the sign down, put up Nelson Mandela Place. That was Glasgow. First city in the world to recognise what was wrong about apartheid. Then they gave the freedom of Glasgow to Nelson Mandela. And you couldn't get information in prison very easily in South Africa, but he eventually found out that he'd been given his freedom. He came to Glasgow and thanked Glasgow because he said, you've no idea exactly what that meant. How will South Africa recognise that we are not allowed to vote? Our version, Scottish version of apartheid. And that is the literal truth. We are not allowed to vote in the future of our country. Doesn't matter whether you want to stay in the Union, doesn't matter whether you want out of the Union. No one is allowed to voice an opinion. South Africa will, that's why I'm writing to these 18 countries. I'm looking to draw them into a net. Sal will know this has been going on, right? I'll come on to that in a second. Here's where the Declaration fits into all of this. Liberation will go and they'll start talking to people who are bureaucrats, lawyers, diplomats, etc. And that's happened before with countries that have tried to get their independence. One was East Timor. I won't take you into the whole story of that, but it was to do with oil. East Timor happened to be sitting in a position between Indonesia and Australia, and everything in between was a seabed of oil. So guess what? People were fighting to stop them getting their freedom. Went to court, and I want to read this to you. This is one extract from the court hearing. One of the judges speaking. The lack of any evidence as to the view of the people of East Timor on whose behalf the application has been filed is one of the principal reasons leading to the inability of the court to decide the dispute. No one had asked the people. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I am asking everyone I meet at rallies, at events, have you got an opinion on independence? Do you want to continue the Treaty of Union? If you don't, sign this please. And I'll send it to the United Nations and I'll involve 18 other countries, because the one thing we cannot do is fail to state that we believe in the independence of our country. What numbers we'll get, I don't know. But everyone in this room who wants independence should state that. Why should they state it? Because of the Supreme Court. As you all know, the Supreme Court said your Parliament can't ask you any questions. But they didn't say you can't ask yourself a question. You can ask yourself a question. You can even answer it. I'll read this to you. This is Lord Reid speaking at the end of the Supreme Court. A lawful referendum on the question envisaged by the bill would undoubtedly be an important political event, even if its outcome had no immediate legal consequences, and even if the United Kingdom government had not given any political commitment to act upon it. A clear outcome, whichever way the question was answered, would possess the authority in a constitution and political culture founded upon democracy, of a democratic expression of the view of the Scottish electorate. The clear expression of its wish either to remain within the United Kingdom or to pursue secession would strengthen or weaken the democratic legitimacy of the Union, depending on which view prevailed. That's Lord Reid at the Supreme Court saying, if someone asks them a question and they give an answer, and that answer is we all want to leave, the UK is kind of stuffed, because we live in a democracy. So we've got to have a question, and then we've got to have an answer. The question isn't enough. We've got to provide proof of what we believe in. Why? Because at the Supreme Court, the Advocate General for the UK, the guy that argued the whole case through the Supreme Court, said, the Advocate General does not dispute that the United Kingdom recognises and respects the right of self-determination in international law. That's an open door, folks. If we go the right way about it, not domestic law, international law, you won't recognise this, it's too far away. It's a ballot paper. And I'll tell you why I kind of fell out with what was going on in 2014. Not big time, but it says, should Scotland be an independent country? That was the question we were asked. And it was a question that was argued over by the government, our government, and then decided upon by the Electoral Commission. You know what's wrong with that question? Because it would have made a difference, one word. Should Scotland be an independent country again? We've been independent for nigh on 900 years. We've only been stuck in the UK for 300. There's a balance to this. You would have woken people up when you stick in one word again. So, I produced a document. Eventually, when it gets to the final stage, it will be shorter than that. It will be a simple question. Do you consent to the continuation of the Treaty of Union? End of. And you'll sign it. And that's going to come later. Let's move on to Salvo. You seen that anywhere? Union myth shattered. It started happening on Saturday at the SSRG conference. On Thursday at 7 o'clock on the Scottish channel, and I hope, because I'm doing another one of these talks, I can't do it personally, I'm an admin on Independence Live, but I've got a friend who's going to move it from YouTube over to Independence Live. Two of us were known as the 12 Heats. We stopped doing it 4 years ago, but we were given inside information, so we interviewed individually the 5 people that were on the panel. including Professor Black, Sarah Salyers, Alf Baird, Sharoff Azizov, and Craig Murray. I haven't seen it. I don't know how it's being edited. I don't know whether I'll object to how it's being edited. So you didn't ask that question. I thought it was a brilliant question, but we'll find out. Let me take you back to December 2022. Ian Lawson, who I sadly miss, ran a blog. And on it, Sarah Salyers and I first met each other. And this is what I said on that blog. When you first posted about Sarah's initiative, I was amongst the first to acknowledge the sheer immensity of the research she had undertaken. I wrote the first draft of the declaration in 2020 and I'm committed to the continuation of the initiative, not least because of the support it has already gained and the contacts I've already established, both in Scotland and internationally. I couldn't just stop. I had no intention of just stopping. My overall judgment, both will continue and both should continue as currently constituted and planned. I met and talked with one of the people who had started it, and I suggested at the moment, to avoid as much confusion, because there was confusion, is this the same thing? They should be kept separate, just allowed to develop in their own right. Sarah replied, long reply. The main difference between your initiative and Liberation's lies in the scale of what we both seek. The right to hold a referendum is merely one of the outcomes of the Liberation campaign to regularise the Union. And if you follow Salvo and Liberation, Salvo in particular, you'll know that they're doing things about free ports, whatever. That's not what I'm trying to achieve. But we ended with Sarah saying at some stage, and she agreed, we need to keep in discussion with each other. And we've done that. I've met Sarah a number of times. Last Saturday being one of them. And I'm going to use my hands to try and describe this. Sarah, you and I have been on a parallel path, but we're apart, we're seen to be apart. Now we need to start pulling them together. You continue to do what you're doing, I'll continue to do what I'm doing. But it takes you back to the East Timor case. If Salvo, 5 people go and they get help from Justice for All International and they go to the UN, someone's going to ask, is there any support in Scotland for independence? That's my job. That's your job. We have got to demonstrate how that can be achieved. Nearly finished, Julian. That's the full documentation that went to the UN from Justice for All International. It's a weighty document. I'm going to flick it over and drop the mic. There are stages. There's a final stage. The final stage includes verification that it is a genuinely registered voter that has signed the declaration. That'll come later. It's not going to happen just yet. But at the moment, I am leaving you, Julian, with 100, obviously 100, blank declarations. I'm going to stress to you, each one of them is numbered. Why is each one numbered? To prevent what happened when we put it online. It's as simple as that. Sir, I remind you that outside every second house is a yes house. Every second person you meet is a yes person. That's me, folks. I can answer questions. You haven't interrupted me. I thank you for that. I hope it's been worthwhile listening to. If you have questions, I'm here.
Thank you very much, Mike. The event on Saturday, or the event at the weekend, including Saturday, couldn't have happened at a more opportune time or we couldn't have invited you at a more opportune time, considering that this event on Saturday was our place or the place where these two campaigns seemed to me to come together publicly. They may have been running alongside each other behind the scenes, but now it's out in the open and it's public. What I'm going to do with these 100, I knew they were going to be here, is would it be okay if I gave each of you maybe 5, one for yourself, if you haven't already signed it, and one for each of 4 people you know who support independence but who may not have signed this already. I can certainly think of a number of people that I know who support independence, but they haven't heard of this campaign at all. So would that be a way forward, you think? Could you manage to find 5 people or 4 other people that would sign this, and then what happens after that? Do we collect them back in at the next meeting?
Can I pinch it back?
Yeah.
Just so you're not alone in being asked to do this, Salvo Presswick are going to give me back their first 100 Thursday this week. It's the reason I missed the show that I'm meant to be part of. They've then asked for a further 100. Yes, Caithness have got their 100 and I know are being slowly completed, nearly completed. Mo from Sarsa has his 100. I'm going to Oban a week on Saturday to give them their 100. All I'm looking for at the moment is to try and get this on the public consciousness. It scares me, Julie, when you made the comment. I know people who will be interested in independence but haven't a clue what this is about. The 100 starts getting it discussed.
Yeah.
There'll be more I'll be doing, but I haven't been hanging back. I made, when it was abused and when it was hacked, I made a personal commitment. I'll go to every rally, I'll go to all the events that are on. I'm hoping at some stage we'll get a lot of PR going. One of the thoughts I've suggested to Yes Caithness is, look, find a Yes biker somewhere in Thurso and get them to take the 100 forms to Inverness and find another Yes biker and get him to take 100 forms to Perth and video this all the way down, and I'll meet them somewhere and collect them from you. There's also, this is arrogant, I have a quite vivid, strange imagination at times. There's a number of things going to happen in the future that I hope will surprise you. That's one of them.
It's a pity that Anne Martin and Lynn Richardson aren't here, because they are Yes bikers that are very often at our meetings. Any questions for Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, Liz.
What about the risks of duplication? I'm imagining, I know I signed it, I remember signing it. I'm thinking of seeing people whom I know, and will they, what if somebody signs it and then remembers, oh gosh, I think I signed that. I think I've already signed that.
Up to now, because I've been doing it, it's been 100% face to face.
Yeah.
Literally, I've been standing at a small table with the forms, people have come up and signed them. I know some people have signed them more than once. I'm not concerned at this stage because my target is not the number of forms. The question you'll always be asked, how many forms have you got, Mike? That's not the purpose at the moment. The idea at the moment is A, to get them lodged in the United Nations and leave them with the problem of, what do we do with these? The bigger target is the 18 countries. And I couldn't get in touch with them unless I'd already got forms lodged in the UN, so I could say to them, Here is a specimen copy of the declaration, but if you want to see the originals, go and speak to the Secretary General. And if the Secretary General, to answer your point, had done something, if he just chucked them in the bin, he's going to feel fairly stupid if 18 countries come to him and say, where are all these declarations? Because I've got proof of it. When I get to the final stage, I've got to make sure that there is no duplication. It can't happen. That's the tricky bit. Well, that's where I actually started. How do I do that? And all I can ask you to accept is I've done nothing to do with independence, but I've organised campaigns before. And I know to start at the hard bit and work your way back to the easy bit.
Thanks, Mike. When you say the 18 countries, is that the non-self-governing territories, or is it 18 countries that have already become independent?
America had a war.
Yeah. So
America had a war to gain their independence. We've a lot of lessons. One of the countries I read out was Ireland.
yeah.
Ireland are allowed by the UK to have a referendum. That's in a treaty that's binding on them. So you get into a situation where Ireland also had to fight for their independence. Most of the countries, India, had to undergo an awful lot of brutal repression before they got their independence. I'm looking for empathy from these countries. Major thing to remember, the population of Scotland is 6 million, roughly. The population of Scots within the Scottish diaspora worldwide is about 20 million. So when I said imagination, because I'm an admin on Independence Live, I already know how many people are from Sandy are liking the posts that are on there. I already know we're getting likes from Australia, we're getting likes from also Brazil, whatever, because they're aware of what's going on. Why? Because Scots are talking to them abroad. We can call on those. I haven't done it yet, but it's one of the things I'm going to try when I mentioned imagination. Get someone like Brian Cox to say, look, Brian, it's great that you appear every so often and say you're all for independence, but what I want to find out is, who are your contacts in the major television studios in America? You know, the ones that would appreciate seeing you. How's about getting Scotland on one of them? How's about we have a wee discussion about Scottish independence, not Tartan-day, an actual discussion about independence. You actually had to fight for it, America. We're trying to do this. All we want to do is put our hands up and vote. Does that seem unreasonable to anyone? But the UK are saying no. Anyway.
On the question of duplication and keeping track, are you aware of David Younger's project, Scotland Decides?
Well, I had a discussion with David Younger recently. It wasn't David Younger that posted this on a post, but it was someone, I think, who was quoting David Younger verbatim, I think, because I know David reasonably well. And the post read, this won't work. This is just people signing bits of paper. There's no qualification to them. There's no ratification to it. It would be far, far better if this guy just learned about the People's Assembly and did it. That's perfectly valid. What I would have said is, but I'm doing it in stages. I know what I've got to do. And please remember, when all this started, David, I was one of the people that helped you get the People's Assembly started. I know exactly what we're dealing with. And when it started, you started buying Bitcoin. You bought Ethereum. And I said right at that point, the worst thing you can ever do is base this on Ethereum, because the thing is volatile. You'll find that it might only be costing a penny today, it might be costing £50,000 a vote. By the time you're finished, you can't do it that way. I haven't come at this as an amateur. I know what is required at the end of the day. It's going to be, I'll assure you of this, it's going to be a Herculean task to make it happen. Because my target, when I do the final stage, is 2 million signatures. And if you think, if anyone in this room says, oh Mike, you're out of your mind, that's impossible. Then why are you asking for a referendum, which involves a bit of paper to be signed? It's signed with a cross, anonymously. Because if you can't get 2 million at a referendum, why am I doing this? My target is 2 million. Just be very aware of that. And I'm doing it, I'll say this, without crowdfunding, on a state pension, and a year and a half, just after September, in December next year, I'll be 80. I'm not doing this for kids' love of it. I want independence for Scotland. I want to see it in my lifetime.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions?
Have you ever spoken about this at Holyrood in any capacity? Right?
I've got, if you're on Facebook, you'll know they're deleting all the videos now, they're archiving them, so I have videos I've saved. The first thing I did to start this off was I started writing to Holyrood, to every MSP, and not to do with the declaration, on things like currency, on things like pensions, on things like regulation, because that's my background. And I was saying there's different things you could do, here's a suggestion, and I hand-delivered the letters, all 129 or whatever, into Holyrood, and I did that about 5 times. I then narrowed it down and only wrote to SNP MSPs. I then narrowed it down even further and wrote to the First Minister and a few of the government ministers. How many replies do you think I got?
Zero.
That was me trying to find out, is there any point? Commonweal are in the same position. You've seen other things that have been delivered in. There's a petition coming through at the moment which ties in with what you were talking about, Julian, where they're saying, okay, can we please pass a Scots law to do with human rights? And they're hitting difficulty. That's why I'm not a member of a political party. You've got to do, there's a brilliant video, depends what you think of Alex Salmond, different people have different views on him, but there's a brilliant video where he was interviewed and he said that going to the UN is one way of doing this, but it's only part of it. We have got to do this for ourselves. And I keep coming back to that, people are sovereign. Unless the people who are sovereign decide in the majority that they want independence, we won't have independence.
That's right, and it was said at the weekend that even if what Savo are doing is, even when what Savo are doing is successful and they make their case, that won't lead to independence directly. It'll still be down to the people, us, to proceed with the various events, voting events, whatever, to make it happen. I think that was said was that at that point the Scottish Government would be regarded as a colonial administration, not a sovereign government. And so it would be up to civic bodies, not parliament, not political parties, civic bodies like trade unions and churches and so on, to conduct the referendum if it comes. And that would be a very big change from the situation that a lot of people envisage at the moment. It wouldn't be a political referendum, it would be a civic referendum where the people are taking the decisions.
You want proof? You absolute proof that the people are sovereign, because it will happen very soon. Very, very soon. In the weeks preceding the 7th May election, maybe about 5 weeks, there is no functioning parliament. There are no MSPs. Government ministers can tick a box as something urgent needs to be done, but not as government ministers. It's like the 15th of September 2014. It was one day the whole of Scotland's future was in our hands. That one day. This time round, for about 5 weeks before the election, it's only the people who are sovereign. No one else. And if we vote at that time and deny the Treaty of Union, who stands in our way? There's a lot of preparation to be done, a lot of psychological work to be done. Don't ever doubt that the people are sovereign. Don't ever doubt it.
Thanks, Mike. Now, I see that Frank has got the tea and coffee out, so we'll break there and return in about 15 minutes.
Folks, if you don't mind, I'm going to disappear off at this juncture. I'll maybe have a cup of coffee, but can I thank each and every one of you? I hope what I've said has given you information, maybe in a different way of thinking about it. And I hope it inspires you to speak to other people and just say, look, people are sovereign. And use that example of 5 weeks before the election. Because no one else can decide who's going to be the next government, who's going to be the next MSPs, except the people. Thank you.